Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here, and welcome to another very exciting tutorial. Today, we're going to be taking a look at creating a massive ball of destruction. So, not recently, I don't know how long it's been, but we created a cool iPhone app that allows you to turn people into demons using your phone. So, we created a cool promo video, and now I'm going to show you how we did some of the effects. So, here's the effect we're going to be taking a look at. Wow. So we've got this glass ball falling down, breaking into millions of pieces, and we're going to be showing you exactly how I put this together. Now, we're going to be doing something a little different in terms of the tutorial. Usually, I try to create a tutorial that everyone can follow along with, but today, I'm going to try to focus on the actual workflow used to create this. So we're going to be using 3D Max, and we're going to jump into After Effects, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's actually going to be a really great tutorial. So definitely really great. Really not that good. The best way to think about it is that in a perfect world, how would I do something? Or, if there weren't any limitations, like if I could fly, how would I get to work? Would I drive? Would I take the bus? Hell, if I could fly, would I even go to work? I'd probably go save people, or fight crime. Probably just steal things. All right, let's go and get started. So we're going to be using 3ds Max, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, we are going to be using an additional plugin for 3D Max, one called Rayfire. And if you do a search, you'll see some information about it. Really cool plugin for doing some dynamics and simulation. So I'm going to show you exactly how to use it, and we'll go from there. So first things we're going to do is create a box. And there we go. Perfect. Now we're going to come over here, take a sphere, and just put one right in the middle here. Maybe that big. That looks good. We'll give it about 64 segments. And then I'm going to right-click and choose Move and just drag it up here. So we're pretty much halfway there. I mean, if we look at the final video, it's pretty close to being done. All right, so the next thing I want to do is create my simulation. So what I'm going to do is come over to the Create. We're going to go down to Rayfire. And I'm going to open that up and open the Rayfire Floater. Now, I'm using version 1.56, so it may be slightly different, but most of the stuff is pretty similar. All right, so this is the Rayfire plugin, and it's really cool, really easy to use. We're going to go over to the objects, and I want to add our sphere into our dynamic impact object, because that's the thing we're actually going to break. Now, for our floor, I'm going to go ahead, take our floor, and add it into our static object. So we'll click Add. Now, one thing I want to do here is I want to set the material of the static object to be something like steel, something really hard. And then for our sphere, I'm going to change the material to something like glass. And that'll make sure the simulation is more accurate and just helps us out overall. First thing, let's take our box and come over to the Modify, and let's just make it a little bit larger so we have a little more space to work with. All right, cool. Now, to run our simulation, we just come over here to Physics. And before we run our simulation, I'm going to go down here to the bottom, and I want to turn on Interactive Demolition. So if we turn on Demolish Geometry, it's actually going to automatically break it based on it falling and hitting the ground. So if we come over here to the Fragmentation, we can set this to, uniform is probably fine. We're going to set it to maybe 150 pieces. So then if we come to Physics, we can click on this Record Bake and basically see what the animation looks like. So when it's done there, I'll just go ahead and hit pause. And I like to do it this way because then I can stop it and I can re-simulate it. So we'll just move this out of the way for now. All right, so we have our simulation. So I'll hit Alt-W, we'll zoom in here. We can scrub the time, and we see the ball, it's complete, and then as it hits the ground, we can actually see the ghost version of the ball. So it automatically hides itself so that when it hits, we can see the broken pieces. So that's a really cool feature. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably want to render this out, add some global illumination, and then upload it on YouTube so people can see your first simulation. And then when you're done, we'll come back and we'll finish up. All right, so we have our simulation here. And looks pretty great. Now, I was just thinking a second ago, what if everything we dropped just shattered into pieces? You know, you're just walking along, you drop your keys, and I think people would be a lot more careful, for sure. Anyhow, what we want to do is add a bunch of microparticles flying around everywhere. So what we need to do is create a particle system. We'll hit 6, and it's going to bring up our particle view. We'll right-click, choose New Particle System, Standard Flow. So pretty standard. What I'm going to do is change the position type to Position Object and replace that. And basically, we want the particles to emit from our pieces of glass. So we'll come over here, click By List, and we're going to select all of the fragments. So we'll click the first one, drag down, hold down Shift, select the last one, and click Select. So if we come up to the top, we're going to click on Lock on Emitter, and if we change the color, we can actually see the particles now stuck to our pieces. So if we go to the birth, let's set that to 0, 1, and maybe 500 particles. So basically at frame 1, there's going to be 500 particles total. So now there's speed, rotation, all this. We don't need that. We'll just delete that. I do want to create a collision event. So we'll take that, put it right above the display. And we need something for our collision event to collide with. So let's create a deflector. So we'll hide that. Come over here to the create. We'll do space warp. So we're going to click on the deflectors. And we're just going to take the standard deflector and we'll zoom out here. And we're just going to draw the deflector. So perfect. Set the bounce to 0. We'll go to the modify. And what I want to do actually is change the name to activate, because this deflector is actually just going to be used to activate our particles. So we'll hit 6, show you what I'm talking about. First, we'll add the deflector to our list. So we'll click List, Activate, Select. So this is definitely getting somewhere. Now I'm going to move all this over. Now the idea here is once the particles come in contact with our deflector, they're actually going to move into another event, into another state. Let's move our deflector up just a bit. So go to about here, set a keyframe, auto key, and just move forward a bit here. So basically, we're animating it as it hits the ground, and we probably just go all the way up with it. So once the particles come in contact with the deflector, we can then move them on into another event. So I'll hit N to shut off animate and hit 6 to bring up our particle view. So let's just add a display node out all by itself along with a speed node. And then we'll change the color from green to red. So then if we take our collision event and we'll feed it into our new event. So if we look, let's see, I'll hit 6. If we look closely here, we can see that the particles, once they collide, they turn red and they actually fall through the ground. So not exactly what we want to have happen, but we can see that they're taking on the new event attributes. So let's go ahead and make some adjustments. So we'll hit 6, come in here, and we want to add a spin. That'll make the particles go spinning. Maybe we'll add a shape instance, so we'll bring that out. Now, we also want the particles to bounce on the surface. So what we want to do is add another collision event. But anytime you have a collision, you also need to have like a gravity. So we'll take a force and we'll drag that out. So we don't have to think of all of these up front, but these are a few that I know we're going to need. So We'll go close this. We'll hit 6. Let's add another deflector. So we'll come in here, click deflector, and we'll just make maybe a really big one. Now I want to go ahead into the modify, turn the bounce down a little bit, 0.7, and turn the friction up a little bit as well. So that'll be good. Hit 6. Let's take the collision and we'll add in that new deflector that's not called activate, and we'll hit select. And so now we're actually going to start seeing the particles bouncing. Now once they bounce once, we need something to bring them back down. So let's go ahead and add a force gravity. So we'll just click in here, make sure it's pointing downward, and then we'll go back into the particle flow, click on forces, and add the gravity. So seems kind of complicated perhaps, but just a lot of little steps that you just have to run into and take care of. So now we can see the particles bounce. So they hit down and then they bounce. But we want them to be a little bit more exciting than that, so let's play around with the speed node. So right now the direction is along the arrow, which basically they're not going anywhere. So let's inherit the previous movement. So now if we move this out of the way, we can see as the particles hit down, they go flying everywhere because that's the motion of the pieces of glass. So that's kind of cool to start us out. But I'm thinking it's a little bit too fluid, so let's go into the speed. Let's add some variation. Let me see if I can adjust this so we can see it all at once. So we'll look at this event. That red is a little bit rough, so let's just set that to white. And maybe we'll just shut the display off in the first event and only display it once they are activated. So it's a little too fluid, so we'll go into the speed and let's turn up the variation of these. So maybe like 100. Maybe we turn the speed down a little bit. So and then we also have some divergence, which is going to just move these around a little bit more. So this is looking pretty good. We have particles going and flying. Now, instead of little ticks, let's see if we can change that to something more useful. So we have our shape instancing on. Now, we can pick a group of pieces, or we can just click one piece. So what I'm going to do is click particle geometry and just click on one of these random pieces. So now what's going to happen is, so I go to the display, I'll set it from ticks to geometry. So now all of those little particles are actually pieces of glass. So if we go into the shape instance, we can scale them down so that they're, micro pieces, and we can turn up the variation, 90, and that way we have a lot of pieces flying everywhere. And frankly, I think we need a lot more. So let's go back up to the birth event and let's turn that up to maybe 5,000. So now we have a lot more particles to work with, and they're really flying everywhere. So probably play around with the speed a little bit more. A little more variation. We can go into the collision event, and let's just make it so that it bounces, collides, say 4 times, and that way it'll stop after that. And maybe